if they don't know there's a problem, how can we change things? How can we have a solution? So I was always thinking that, just by getting out the truth, we can shift consciousness and change things. And I realized, there's more obstacles than just simply getting that information out to people, but it is the first step in the shift that needs to happen. And my mentor, Bill Moyer, he also talked about how the public needs to be convinced 3 times, first that a problem exists and then that they can overcome it, and that the solution is less scary than the problem, because most human beings are terrified of change. And they don't want to go out of the frying pan into the fire. So it's hard to get people to change. I think we've seen Naomi Klein's book on the shock doctrine.
Yes.
That they use this all the time. I mean, they create problems, they create catastrophes so that they could offer false solutions, which which exasperate the problem and make things worse. But they push them through so quickly that people think, or they get tricked, or they get duped into horrific changes. I mean, some of us realize what's going on, and say, "Hey, wait, hold on, don't pass the Patriot Act. We don't need that. That's not going to make things better." But it's always, I would say, a dance or a struggle between affecting people's consciousness and winning over people. I don't know if you saw the film that just came out, I Am.
I haven't seen it yet.
The documentary. It's really quite interesting. It's a filmmaker. He injures his brain and goes to seek responses to the most profound questions from the great wise people about, what are the problems, how can we solve them? And of course, the quick solution is I am the problem, I am the solution. But it looks at sort of the process of enlightenment and the latest discoveries in consciousness and how things are connected, and how human beings, in some ways, we're each a cell of this much larger body, and that our consciousness, that we're part of a whole, and we affect the whole, and how with animals like deers and fish and birds, when you see them swarming, or the schools of fish gathering, and the deer deciding to go somewhere, in some ways they're voting, and they affect one another's consciousness, and human beings to some degree are the same way. When they sense that a vast majority is moving a certain direction, most of them will go along, because we want to belong. We want to be part of something. And so convincing people that they're part of the majority is part of winning over the population to go or move in a certain direction. And there's always a battle over how do we reach people to get them to move in a direction which is beneficial to all of. I mean, the activist people who want the planet to survive. We want humanity to move on a path towards
wholeness.
Right, and then there's this other part that wants to hang on to power, and I think to some degree, they don't mind killing off a lot of people so they can maintain their wealth and their power. And so they do things which are not to the detriment, or that are to the detriment of the vast majority, and to their own, and I would just say too, I really think that there's something deeply wrong with them, because they are putting humanity on a suicidal, very destructive path that's taking down a lot of other species and threatening the whole biosphere. And it is this sort of Eric Fromm talks about this, the biophiliacs and the necrophiliacs. The biophiliacs are those who love life, and the necrophiliacs, those are the ones that if they can't control it, they want to kill it. And unfortunately, in some ways, they're destroying themselves. They're almost committing suicide, and while they're doing it, they're taking down lots of other peoples. They're destroying their souls, and they're causing so much harm. And that's where I think when I was raising kids, I said, the solution isn't to just kill all the bad guys. That doesn't work. You have to realize these people who are causing so much destruction, it's because they never learned how to love. There's a disconnect within themselves. They don't. There's something fundamentally wrong. If they knew how to love, they wouldn't create the pain and the problems that they do. I think there's some famous quotes about some of the ruling elite in England who think that the best thing for humanity would be a modified Ebola virus. They could wipe out 93% because they think of humanity as a plague, a cancer upon the earth. And I love Starhawk because she says that's a very dangerous way of thinking. We have to realize that we are part of nature and that we can live with nature and in harmony, in a very beautiful coexistence and co-evolutionary process. And I think that's where I'm leaning towards, and those are the people that I work with, is conscious co-evolution with nature. We don't want to try to force these radical changes upon nature so that we can make a bunch of money, like the people who have been trying to bioengineer the food, who have eradicated 95% of the animal plants on the planet, and thrown out so much biopollution that now food is a threat to human health, as well as all these new chemicals, which they combine with other things. They're a terrible threat to human health. There's all sorts of, we know there's a litany of destructive technologies which have been thrown out there without thinking deeply or wisely about the impact on human health and the health of everything else. And that's where the work needs to be done. I have another friend, and I created the conception dollars, which were antidotes. People look at the deception dollars, and we've created over 7 million of these. But the deception dollars, originally they had Bush on them, and then they had a few other people in the background, and then they had Cheney on them. And the latest one has a man holding up an Obama mask, flanked by Cheney lowering a Bush mask. But they have the important websites about 9/11 questioning the official story, and they will take people down the 9/11 truth rabbit hole, where you'll find out about false flag operations and how the official story is false. And for people who have never questioned the government, it can be
daunting at best.
And it can be frightening, too. So a lot of people don't want to even look there. They don't want to go there. They're in denial. They can't handle that. They resist it. So we made these other dollars, which are the antidote dollars. And the first batch were conception dollars. And they had 4 in the corner: for justice, for truth, for peace, for ecological wisdom. And the first ones had Cindy Sheehan, who was running against Pelosi on an impeachment platform, and then they have websites looking at solutions and butterflies and beautiful. The first ones had hope on the back, and it was to move us from empire towards community, to shift the story, to look at 4 solutions. And then last year, I published a new version, an evolution of that, and those were the perception dollars. And if you look at those, instead of having a person, there's a keyhole with this beautiful image of a future we would like to go to. And on the back, it says love.
I love that. I saw it. Beautiful.
And in the O, there's the cosmic egg that's cracking, and this beautiful woman holding the earth in her arms very lovingly. And those, again, it's looking at solutions. And both the conception and the perception dollars, people are so hungry for doing something positive, but it's much easier for them to just jump into doing something healthy and positive than doing the shadow work and going through all the depressing